While the Taliban and Afghan politicians opposed to President Ashraf Ghani are also all set to meet in Russia this week, as the United States is already holding its own negotiations with the group, as we've been reporting. Now, the former president of Afghanistan, Hamid Karzai, said that he will be attending the Afghan peace talks, which is scheduled to be held in Moscow on the 5th and 6th of February. And Tolo News in Russia quoted Karzai as saying that the Moscow talks are important for the peace process in the country. The Moscow meeting will be attended by leaders of some of the top political parties in Afghanistan and the representatives of Taliban. Now, the Afghan Ministry of Foreign Affairs, however, has told Wion that the government will not be attending the talks. The Taliban refuses to recognize Ghani's government, calling it a puppet to the US. And Ashraf Ghani has repeatedly called on the Taliban to begin talks with his government. The Moscow dialogue comes after officials from over 40 countries attended an international contact group meeting in London, where the top US and Afghan officials announced their support for the Afghan peace process. And Lucy Taylor, my colleague, is joining us live now from Moscow for the very latest on this new format of talks. And, well, not so new, but also in addition to what the US is doing. And Lucy, now, how do you see the Moscow dialogue running parallel to the US one? And are they at any point going to engage with the Afghan government under Ashraf Ghani? Because both the Americans and the Russians have kept out Ashraf Ghani from this conversation and engaged other political parties and stakeholders in Afghanistan.
Yes, well, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has spoken about that a little earlier today. He said that talks between, or dialogue between the Afghan government and the Taliban were unavoidable. So it seems that the Russian government believes that that will happen at some point, however, not tomorrow, not in the talks that begin here in Moscow tomorrow. Those talks do involve a number of different parties from Kabul and beyond, including Hamid Karzai and his delegation, as you say, and in total 38 delegates from Kabul, including presidential hopefuls and a number of opposition leaders, tribal elders, and people like that, as well as 10 members of the delegation from the Taliban. So many different people discussing this, but it won't involve Afghan government officials. Moscow, as you say, has tried to stay out slightly of the arrangements for this. The Russian government position is that these talks are being hosted here in Moscow, but that are actually being organised by a separate organisation, the Council of Afghan Society, which represents the diaspora, the Afghan diaspora from countries around the region. So the Russian government staying out of it, but has suggested that it believes that in the future it will be inevitable for those two parties to speak to each other. As you say, these talks are running parallel and separately to the US-led peace talks. So a number of different fronts that these discussions are taking place at the moment.
Right, absolutely, Lucy. Thanks very much indeed for joining us with the very latest there on the Moscow dialogue.